Welcome, and thanks for joining. Tonight, we step into a world far from gilded palaces and royal banquets. A world where the first light of dawn finds you, drawing water from the Nile, your feet sinking into cool mud, and the only music is the low murmur of fellow servants stirring from hard mats. We're peeling back the veil on life in ancient Egypt. Before we begin, if you enjoy uncovering these hidden lives, go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, only if you genuinely enjoy the content. And let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. It's always a thrill to see how our modern world gathers around these ancient whispers. Thank you. Now, dim the lights, feel the distant breeze off the river, and settle in. Step with me into a day lived in service and unfree labor, where every dawn brought new burdens, and every dusk carried hopes for a gentler tomorrow. To be a servant in ancient Egypt, before dawn breaks over the Nile, you slip quietly along narrow mud-brick corridors tucked behind your master's grand house. The air clings to your skin, thick with the scent of baking bread and the faint smoke of oil lamps still burning low. In dim light, you and the other servants stir from humble mats laid across the hard-packed earth, blinking away sleep as you prepare for another day of unending chores. This hidden world, cramped sleeping quarters, steamy kitchens, and dusty storage rooms, lies just beyond the glittering collars and carved ivory of the rooms your masters occupy. Here, tired eyes meet in silent understanding. Whispered stories echo off cold walls and small gestures of kindness. A shared piece of onion, a half-broken bead, given in friendship, offer brief reprieves from the weight of duty you bear. You rise hours before your masters, knowing that by the time their first guests arrive, you must have drawn fresh water from the Nile, swept the floors so immaculate that a drop of dust would disgrace your lord, and baked loaves of barley bread that will vanish within moments at the family table. Your tunic is plain linen, damp in the morning chill, and you press it flat against your back, aware that any sign of wear or dirt might draw sharp words from the overseer. Still, when you catch sight of another servant's encouraging nod or feel the warmth of a shared cup of beans, you remember that you are not entirely alone in this. Your world is defined by these cramped spaces. Narrow corridors branch off from the buzzing activity of the main house, leading to kitchens where wooden mallets pound grain into flour and clay pots simmer with onions, lentils, or leftover fish. With each bit of steam that pulses into the hallway, you're reminded of the next urgent task: fetching clay pots stacked high on precarious shelves, stoking fires that could scorch your arms, or mixing fresh dough before the ovens burn out. Once the morning sun creeps over the palace walls, you slip out of your quarters to draw water from a nearby well. The buckets are heavy, and the rope rough against your hands, but it's a job you perform daily, knowing that without clean water, the entire household grinds to a halt. Your meager belongings, perhaps a simple blue faience bead or a chipped wooden comb, are stored in a battered chest in the corner of your sleeping room. This chest holds every piece of your identity: a few tunics, a small clay lamp for late-night tasks, and a handful of grains saved from yesterday's milling. Privacy is scarce. You sleep shoulder to shoulder with others on thin mats, listening to the soft groans of exhaustion as you and your fellow servants rest for the briefest moment before the next wave of chores. Yet, in those pre-dawn hours, you whisper secrets to one another, letters scrawled in charcoal on discarded pottery shards called ostraka, passed hand to hand. In their crude lines, you find evidence that even within these walls, friendships form and rivalries flare, anchoring you to a shared humanity far from the world of feathered fans and gold-trimmed robes. Outside the city's imposing walls, you may find yourself assigned to sprawling estates along the fertile banks of the Nile. Here, the master's villa, with its gleaming columns and ornamental gardens, remains just out of reach. Instead, you dwell in simple mud-brick barracks clustered together, where the only furniture is a mat for sleeping and clay jars for water. You wake at dawn to mend irrigation dikes. The silt, once so precious, becomes a constant adversary, leaking through hastily tamped mud. You work beside other field laborers, some born free, others born into bondage. The master's overseer barks orders while you and your companions rebuild canals, guide oxen through muddy fields, and watch over cattle grazing in the tall reeds. When the work is done, you may have a meager meal of coarse bread and onions, washed down with water that sometimes carries a brackish taste of river silt. Hygiene is a daily struggle. Bathing is reserved for special occasions, rituals at the local shrine, or the festivals when the Nile's rising is celebrated with offerings. On most days, you wipe sweat from your brow and stir dust into your hair, knowing that clothes will remain unwashed until the next market day, when you can trade a bit of labor for fresh linen. Soon, after you have eaten, you gather under the scant shade of palm fronds, sharing stories of missed pay or rumored kindness from a benevolent mistress. These moments, brief as they are, become lifelines, reminders that even in fields of burning sun and sticky fly-laden air, the human spirit persists. Within each household or estate, your status is clearly marked by the color of your tunic, the thickness of your sandals, and the weight of your collar or absence of one. Free servants may receive task assignments directly from a steward. Slaves, however, exist as property under the law. If you were captured in war or born into bondage, you know that escape from this life is nearly impossible. Yet, there are rare moments when hope glimmers: a mistress who quietly slips you an extra loaf of bread, a master who teaches you to read simple glyphs in exchange for loyalty, or an overseer who, recognizing your skill with ropes or clay, sends word you might be transferred to a less grueling post. Even so, most days you accept your place in this rigid system, finding solace in small ways, trading a borrowed comb for a respite from the midday sun, exchanging a grain of incense for the chance to whisper a prayer at the local shrine, or nurturing friendships that become feigned families in exile. On market days, you may accompany your master's children, or fetch supplies from the bustling stalls near the river's edge. Here, you glimpse the wider world: traders from Nubia hawking exotic spices, artisans selling glazed pottery, and scribes chanting accounts of temple offerings. You feel a twinge of envy when a Nubian merchant bargains for his freedom, or hears of a craftsman rising in status due to the king's favor. Yet you also see yourself reflected in the wares: clay vessels that remind you of cooking pots back home, woven baskets echoing the ones you use to carry grain, and jewelry that mirrors the mismatched beads you keep as treasured adornments. These fleeting visions of possibility remind you that even the unfree laborers have a story, a life beyond the heavy yoke of servitude. And though the path to true freedom may seem distant as the river's horizon, your quiet resilience and the bonds you forge become the foundation of your identity. Your daily routine unfolds like clockwork: pre-dawn bread baking, morning water hauls, midday courtyard sweeps, afternoon deliveries to the fields, and evening fireside chores. You know exactly when the foreman's whip will crack, when the mistress's call for fresh linens will echo from the bedchamber, and when the overseer will demand more grain be brought from the storehouse. But within this relentless schedule, you carve out moments of autonomy. Perhaps you whistle an old folk tune while brushing out barley stalks, or invent a subtle gesture to signal to a fellow servant that it's time for a stolen mouthful of figs. You save scraps of onion skins to dye your linen a slightly richer hue, and you memorize the route to the granary so you can slip away after dusk to offer a prayer of thanks at a shrine hidden among date palms. When servants gather under cover of night, or during the tiny lull between tasks, you share whispered stories of home, how your father taught you to coax a stubborn seed from the earth, how your mother spun threads of flax while singing lullabies to her grandchildren. You learn secrets where the master hides extra wine, how the foreman's son is too afraid to tend to the cattle, or which guard falls asleep by the riverbank first. In these moments of solidarity, you transform from a faceless cog in a machine of wealth and power into a person worthy of compassion. You may lack freedom, but you possess knowledge of the land, of the Nile's moods, and of the subtle rhythms that govern every household and estate. And with that knowledge, you find a flicker of control, a small flame of dignity, amid the shadows of servitude. If you pause in the courtyard during a brief respite, you might see a mother cradling her weeping child before returning to her chores. You might notice two young cousins swapping ragged dolls as a momentary escape from the relentless heat, and you'll overhear older servants reminiscing about the day the Nile flooded just right, saving the entire village from famine. In every whispered conversation, you hear tales of solidarity, how a woman slipped her barley ration to a friend's hungry child, or how men banded together to rebuild a collapsed dike before the master discovered the damage. These acts of compassion, though modest, become legacies that ripple through generations, teaching you that even in servitude, you can shape the world around you. Belief in the gods sustains you when the sky grows dark with locust clouds, or the tax collector's tallies threaten your meager existence. You press your palm to the carved figure of Hathor in the temple corridor, offering a pinch of incense and a heartfelt plea. Grant me strength to endure. Grant my children safety. Grant my loved ones a harvest next season. And when you see an unexpected grain of wheat sprout in the unlikely crease of a granary wall, you whisper gratitude for a small miracle. In these faith-filled moments, you glimpse a world beyond your chains, a world where your spirit cannot be owned. In stepping into the daily life of a servant or unfree laborer, you see how their toil, whether in shadowed kitchens, sun-baked fields, or stifling dormitories, wove the very fabric of ancient Egypt. Their sweat and whispered prayers carried the weight of empires, feeding palaces, fueling armies, and building temples that reached toward the sky. And though their names often vanish from royal records, their resilience and compassion endure in every weathered wall, every silent canal, and every shard of pottery inscribed with a humble human story. Before dawn breaks over the Nile, you slip along the narrow mud-brick corridors that wind behind your master's grand house. The air clings to you, thick with the scent of baking bread and the soft clatter of pots. You rouse from the humble mat that serves as your bed, knowing your day will be filled with endless chores. This hidden world, tucked away from the shiny collars and glittering jewels of your masters, welcomes you in darkness. Here, your tired eyes meet those of fellow servants. Whispered stories are shared in passing, and small moments of kindness. A crust of bread offered by a friend, a quiet nod of understanding, offer brief relief from the weight of duty you carry. You live and sleep in narrow mud brick corridors that run behind the grand walls of Egypt's elite households. These hidden passageways form a world apart, reserved for you and the other servants. The kitchens, always teeming with heat, sit just a breath away from the dark storage rooms where you stack clay jars of grain, garlic, and salted fish. In the corner of your communal sleeping space, thin mats lie across hard-packed earth, your only comfort at night. During the day, you scurry between tasks, ever aware of the voices of your masters echoing through the gilded halls you are forbidden to enter. The warm, steamy air from the kitchens mixes with the aroma of fresh bread, reminding you how essential your work is, even if no one above suspects the effort it takes. You keep a few personal possessions close: a battered wooden comb, a chipped blue fanes bead, a simple linen tunic, symbols of small joys in a place where privacy is rare. At mealtimes, you eat quickly: barley bread torn in half, a handful of onions, sometimes scraps of fish, or a fig, if fortune favors you. These morsels filter down from your master's table, leftovers that you and your companions share in a tight circle during brief breaks. On rare occasions, your master or mistress bestows a small gift, perhaps a slightly finer robe or a string of beads, but you know that rigid class boundaries rarely flatten. Unless you are born free or earn an unexpected favor, you have little chance to climb beyond your station. You rise before the sun, long before anyone in the main house stirs. Your first task is to draw fresh water from the well, balancing a heavy clay jar on your shoulder so that the palace will have enough for cooking and bathing. Next, you sweep and scrub floors, using fronds of palm to chase away dust and grains of sand before they find their way into your master's slippers. In the kitchen, you grind emmer wheat on stone querns, your arms pressed to the top stone, twisting and turning until the flour you produce feels like dust between your fingers. You mix dough into clay pots, stoke the fire beneath the oven, and judge the heat just right, because a burnt loaf could earn you a harsh reprimand. Under the watchful eye of the overseer, an older servant entrusted to maintain strict order, you carry water from courtyard wells, fetch bundles of reeds for torches, and sort baskets overflowing with produce. One wrong step, one misplaced loaf, and you risk sharp words, or worse. One wrong step, one misplaced loaf, and you risk sharp words, or worse. Yet, even as you labor in perpetual motion, you find moments of solidarity with other servants. In that pre-dawn hush, you exchange whispered confidences, short arguments over who cleans which room, small joys at finding a half-broken bead in the dust, or shared secrets scrawled in charcoal on broken potsherds, ostraca, hidden under your mat. These scraps of writing reveal friendships, grudges, and fleeting dreams, proof that your world, though small, brims with human complexity. It is there, in the tiny crack between chores, that you build a lifeline of trust. I'll cover for you if the overseer comes, or pass me a sip of your water jug when you fetch it. Beyond the city walls, sprawling estates sit along the Nile's banks. You may be assigned to one of these fields, where basic mud brick barracks house entire families of laborers. Each morning, you step into damp furrows to till the soil, your hands red from mud and sting of insects. You rebuild dikes, feeling the weight of your master's demands as surely as the hot clay pressed between your fingers. Cattle graze nearby, watched over by you and your fellow field workers, who are often children, parents, and grandparents from the same lineage of servitude. In your barracks, you sleep on mats, surrounded only by clay jars for water and perhaps a battered wooden chest to guard your meager belongings. Meals are simple, roughly baked bread, a handful of lentils, the occasional onion. Clean water is rationed, and you bathe only when the master permits. If the Nile floods, or if there is a festival, dried mud cakes beneath your fingernails become badges of endurance. Here, overseers maintain a delicate balance between necessity and oppression. They enforce rules with a stern voice. Armed with a stick, they seldom hesitate to raise. You know that rebellion is dangerous, yet on rare afternoons, when the overseer's back is turned, you and others share a murmur of protest. A wife might slip extra onions to her husband. A father might promise his daughter a flicker of hope. Still, for many of you, these fields represent a cycle of unending toil. Generations have labored in the same mud brick quarters, your parents, your grandparents, and soon your own children. Even so, when you rise at dawn, you find solidarity in the rhythm of the seasons. The crack of dawn, the rivers swell, the harvest of grain that will feed the temple's workers and raise coffers across the kingdom. Within temple complexes, a slightly different world awaits. If you serve as a temple worker or cultic laborer, gardener, baker, musician, or water carrier, you don a simple white linen garment and keep your head shaven for ritual purity. Your home sits on the outskirts of the sacred precinct, often with just enough space for a small private corner, or, if you're fortunate, a patch of land to tend your own garden. The temple's priests give you orders, and you scrub temple floors, repair cracked mud brick walls, and haul water for ritual ablutions. Statues of gods demand daily offerings, food, incense, music, so you and your companions must polish gold surfaces with fine sand and soft linen. Your food is more reliable than that of rural peasants. Loaves of bread, jugs of beer, and the occasional dribble of figs from temple stores. On festival days, you receive small gifts, perhaps a piece of cloth or a handful of oil. In these moments, you glimpse a measure of status or respect that other laborers seldom see. Yet, even here, your life unfolds under strict hierarchy. Priests walk freely through halls you may never enter. Rituals unfold in languages you barely understand, and your every movement is observed for ritual purity and obedience. Every work environment shapes you, your friendships, your sense of self, and your hopes for tomorrow. In the hush of servant quarters, you learn to whisper hopes and grievances. In the sprawling fields, you find kinship in shared fatigue and occasional laughter when the Nile's breeze carries relief. In the dormitories of state projects, you bond with artisans and captives alike over chipped pottery and shared bowls of gruel. In the sacred halls of temples, you discover a small pride in nourishing the gods, even as priests tower above you in linen robes. As dawn's first light shimmers on polished limestone floors, you are already awake in the household of a noble. Desert air presses relentlessly outside, but inside, you move with quiet precision. Almost every detail of daily life here falls to you before your master stirs. You grind emmer wheat into flour, your arms pressing stone querns until your shoulders throb. Dough forms under your fingers, and you stoke fires in clay ovens until coals glow red. Another of your companions carries a water jar balanced on her shoulder, drawn from the courtyard well, her arms straining against the weight. Once breakfast loaves emerge from the oven, you set to sweeping and scrubbing. Brooms of palm fronds sweep dust from floors so spotless that no grain of sand can mar them. You dust furniture inlaid with ivory and precious woods, using linen cloths until the surfaces gleam. Your plain linen kilt sets you apart from the glittering collars and fine garments of your masters. You wear no jewelry, only a shaven head and a sense of duty that weighs heavier than any gold ring. Throughout the morning, the overseer, an older servant chosen for his unwavering loyalty, inspects your work. He moves through the kitchen and storerooms, checking for correct measurements, proper oven temperature, and whether each basket of grain is neatly arranged. If you falter, his crisp words cut you. Why is the flour coarser than yesterday, or faster with the water? Your master waits. You keep your head bowed, cringe at each reprimand, and resolve to do better next time. By midday, preparations for the elite family's main meal unfold like a ritual. You roast meat and fish with onions, coriander, and lentils in clay pots, testing each dish for flavor. The brewery's battered vats bubble with fermenting barley, and you carefully pour fine beer into ceramic cups. Every dish is tasted and arranged precisely. Symmetry is honor, and any imperfection is shame. You and your colleagues serve behind your masters, ready to refill their cups, wipe their hands with clean linen, and whisk away any crumbs that dare to fall. When your household duties end, laborers beyond the mansion's walls take up the kingdom's mantle. In grand temples on the Nile's banks, you arrive before dawn to the scent of incense and the sound of priests chanting hymns. Your work here is as grueling as it is sacred. You scrub temple floors until your knuckles bleed, repair cracked mud brick walls before the next ritual, and haul water in clay jars for priests to use in daily ablutions. Statues of gods demand constant attention. You polish gold leaf surfaces with fine sand under the watchful gaze of temple overseers. One slip, a drop of oil on the tiles, a missed spot of dust on a statue can bring scorn and, at worst, punishment. In the open air, around pyramids and grand temples, conscripted laborers form lines as dawn breaks. You join them, shoulder to shoulder, hefting wooden sledges loaded with massive stone blocks. Each team chants as you pull, synchronizing breath and muscle, while others in front scatter water on the sand to reduce friction. Overseers with staves pace the lines, their eyes sharp for any sign of slackening. If you falter, if the chant falters, you feel their staff's sharp rap across your back, reminding you that the work never stops until the sun sets. Even after the day's labor, your duties do not end. You bathe tunics and loincloths in the river, scrubbing them against washing stones with lye made from natron salt, releasing clouds of grime into the current. Your hands ache, raw from sand, acid salt, and stone. At night, you and your fellow servants share stories as you sit on worn mats, recounting each moment of the day, one dropping a jar, another nearly slipping on a stone ramp. You whisper hopes for an easier task tomorrow, dreams of freedom, or at least enough food to keep your children from going hungry. In every corner of ancient Egypt, behind palace walls, in sprawling fields, at grand temples, and on monumental building sites, you, the servant or unfree laborer, sustain the kingdom. Your hands prepare feasts for nobles. Your sweat tends to fields that fill royal granaries. Your strength erects stone pillars that reach toward the heavens. And though your name may never grace a temple wall, your life echoes through every brick, every loaf of bread, and every drop of water offered in the temples. In your daily toil, you weave a legacy more enduring than gold, the heartbeat of an empire.